Hello, people of Earth, and hello, Murray Griffin.
Hello, Francisca Curran. How are you doing?
I'm really well, thanks. I'm really well. And what about you?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. It's
Mm,
been another very big week, so lots to talk
it's
about.
been a big week. It's also a big day, isn't it? It's a very big and important, it's a special day today. It's not that it's World Rainforest Day, which is also today,
Right.
but it's fitting that it is because it's your birthday, Murray. Happy birthday.
Thanks very much, Francisca. June 22, the shortest birthday of the year.
That's very good. Yes, the solstice, the
Yeah,
light hours. Ah,
yes, yes.
wonderful. Oh, you've dealt with that your whole life.
And my birthday did trigger a wonderful piece of fan artwork,
It
didn't it?
did. You had fan mail art. I loved it. It was this beautiful sketch of the two of us under the Earth logo. I thought that was
Yes,
very special, Murray.
it was
So
indeed.
a shout out to your friend
To to Prue
who made
Borthwick.
that.
Thanks very much for that wonderful card.
Ah, I loved it. Awesome. Well, Murray, do you want to kick us off with your pick of the week?
Well, yes, pick of the week. It's really important news, quite depressing news. Testing by CSIRO has
Mm.
confirmed that the highly infectious H5 bird flu, which has devastated many bird and seal and sea lion populations around the world, has been found in Australia. So testing showed a dead seabird, a skua,
Mm.
in Western Australia was infected with the virus, and a giant petrel that was found in Western Australia is also thought to have been infected. And Australia's Threatened Species Commissioner, Dr. Fiona Fraser, has warned us that this could prove to be very serious. According to Dr. Fraser, the overseas experience is that there have been significant mortality events in birds and mammals where this disease has become established. And she described it as a sobering development that we all hoped would never happen. But unfortunately, it has. And Dr. Fraser said that we should expect that if it does become established in Australia, there will also be impacts to Australian wildlife, in particular birds and mammals. Dr. Fraser said the federal government has been working with states and territories to develop more than 100 site specific and species specific plans to try and manage the impacts of bird flu if it does become
Mm.
widespread. And the plans target some of Australia's most vulnerable species, including the Tasmanian devil, which is susceptible because it scavenges dead birds, and the
Mm.
orange-bellied parrot, for example, to name just two. So if people want to find out more, there's a news service called The Conversation, which on the weekend published a detailed explainer on H5 bird
Mhm.
flu. And there's also a government bird flu website, and we'll put the links in the show notes. And Dr. Fraser's advice is if you come across multiple sick or dead birds or other wildlife, don't touch or approach them and keep your pets away from them. Take photos or videos and note the location from a safe distance and report it immediately to the Emergency Animal Disease Hotline on 1800 675 888. That's 1800 675 888. So, a rather depressing news
Mhm.
item, Francisca, and I'm hoping you can cheer us up a bit more with your pick of the week.
Yes, so my pick of the week is some good news. It's about a technology company called MCI Carbon that's just opened a sort of demonstration facility in Newcastle in the New South Wales Hunter Valley, which they're calling a carbon refinery. And what
Yeah.
this facility does is it takes carbon dioxide that would have been released as a waste product of a large industrial facility, and it converts it into basically stone, into carbonates, which can be used to make products like concrete and other industrial inputs. So that's really exciting instead of the carbon dioxide being released into the atmosphere. And this demonstration plant has been built on Orica's Kooragang Island site in Newcastle, where Orica manufactures ammonia. And in this demonstration phase, it will collect 1,000 tons of carbon dioxide a year and then convert that gas, as I said, into carbonate solids that can go into other input processes like plasterboard paper and concrete.
Very exciting. I love this technology.
I think it's very cool. It's a great start. 1,000 tons of carbon dioxide is is a demonstration, is a pilot sort of demonstration size, but they're already building a commercial scale of the plant at a factory in Austria. And that plant is much larger and can be a template for other carbon refineries at other industrial sites. And that will capture 50,000 tons of carbon dioxide annually.
Do you think it was a delivery problem? Like that larger plant was supposed to come to
It's
Australia,
just too big.
but but people, you know how people mix up Austria and Australia all the
Ah,
time. So,
I think that was it. Because when I was looking at the website and they're like, "Oh, yeah, Austria," I was like, "Oh, no, do you mean Australia? Is that?"
so yeah, yes,
Oh,
a much bigger plant in Austria, lucky Austria, but they've got
yeah.
big plans, this company, haven't they?
Yeah, and I think that's exciting, and when we think about 50,000 tons of carbon dioxide, some of Australia's largest facilities would be able to reduce their emissions substantially with something like this. And a case study of this project is on the Australia's Net Zero Economy Authority's website, and it includes a quote from Jacob, who has worked at MCI since 2022, and he says, I wanted to be part of building something that has a long-term future in Australia. The skills I developed in coal are still highly relevant. They're now just being applied to technologies that help reduce emissions and create new opportunities. So I just love that story of a transition, a personal career transition towards something, yeah, so meaningful for climate.
Yeah,
Hmm.
because he used to work in the coal industry and now works for MCI Carbon, and transferring those skills from an industry that's sort of on the way out and to a new industry that's got a very bright future.
Yes.
So,
And here's some audio from a YouTube clip about the project.
Imagine if we could turn CO2 into valuable materials. A new paradigm for removing carbon emissions is here, and with it, a large-scale solution for climate change. At MCI, we're pioneering a revolutionary and patented CO2 transformation technology. By forming partnerships with industries, we prevent their CO2 from entering the atmosphere by converting it from a gas into solid materials, which are then used to create valuable products for large-scale sustainable infrastructure and manufacturing. Existing markets, such as the cement industry, can create new materials to reduce their carbon footprint and lock away CO2 permanently. At MCI, we're partnering with industry leaders in mining, energy, and manufacturing to create profitable decarbonisation pathways. Join us on the path to zero emissions.
okay, time for our quiz question. And the question today is, what is estivation? So that
Mm.
word again, estivation. And here's a clue. It's something that some animals do, including Australia's most endangered reptile. So stay tuned for the
Mm.
answer.
Okay, let's kick off with the rest of the news. And first up, we're going to talk about why so many Victorian households are going to be eligible for 3 hours of free electricity per day from the 1st of October this year. So, first up, a bit of background. Last November, Australia's Climate Change Minister Chris Bowen said electricity companies in southeast Queensland, New South Wales, and South Australia would be required to offer all households the option of being on an energy plan that gave them 3 hours of electricity in the middle of the day for free. And the reason that's possible is because there's so much solar now being generated in Australia. Recently, the Victorian government has released details of its version of the Midday Power Saver scheme, which will start on the 1st of October. The Victorian government says households could save between $149 and $1,102 per year on a midday power saver plan, depending on how much electricity use they shift to that midday period. But one of the most interesting things about the scheme is that all 2.6 million Victorian households will be eligible, and that's because all households in Victoria have a smart meter. As a result of a mandatory rollout which was carried out from 2009 to 2015. But in other states, smart meters are still being rolled out, and as a result, the other participating states combined only have 2.4 million households in total that can take advantage of a free middle of the day electricity plan.
You know, I find that a really
That's
interesting
so
story because,
interesting.
yeah,
Mm.
I remember when that rollout, because as you know, I'm based in Victoria, and I remember when that
Mm.
was done, and there was so much outcry and outrage and so on. It was incredibly difficult to sustain. And now this is just one more example of the benefits of
Mm.
mandating that smart meter rollout all
Yeah,
those
they're
years ago.
laughing now
Yeah,
opposed to
absolutely.
us up in Southeast Queensland, that's
Have you
a
got a
very
smart meter?
interesting. No.
Yeah, there you go. Move to Victoria. That's my advice. Okay, we've got a few stories about water this week, and let's start with a new update on efforts to protect the rivers, streams, wetlands, and floodplains of the Murray-Darling Basin, along with the native plants, birds, and animals that depend on them. So basically, it was realised quite a few years ago that more water had to be released to keep these environments functioning. Otherwise, they would simply dry up in many places, or they would get toxic blue-green algal blooms, or the water in the system would become increasingly salty. To try to prevent these kinds of environmental disasters, which would harm extensive areas in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and South Australia, a Murray-Darling Basin plan was agreed back in 2012 by the federal government and each state government. And one of the targets in it was to recover an additional 450 gigalitres of water each year by the end of 2027 that could be directed towards keeping the Murray-Darling environment alive and functioning. And last week, Environment Minister Murray Watt released a new update that said nearly 85% of the Murray-Darling Basin Plan's environmental water target has now been achieved. Murray Watt said that more than 380 gigalitres of extra water has now been recovered for the environment towards the 450 gigalitre annual target. And you might wonder, well, how has it been achieved? It's been achieved through things like spending money so that water for other purposes, like farming, mining, and drinking water, is used more efficiently. And it's also been achieved by buying entitlements to use water that farmers and miners in the area hold, but are willing to sell to the government. And a new government update says these increased environmental flows have provided important support for 26,000 kilometres of waterways and 11 Ramsar wetlands in the Murray-Darling Basin system. And they've helped to slow rising salinity levels in South Australia's Coorong wetlands, which is a beautiful area made famous by the film Storm Boy that stretches
Mm.
more than 140 kilometres at the end of the Murray River. There's plenty more to do, and the Murray-Darling Basin Authority says harmful algal blooms are still possible, likely, or almost certain in some parts of the system. But it shows that very significant progress is being made. You can find the links to the update and the Minister's announcement in the show notes. And just a reminder, you can find the links for all today's news items in our newsletter, which you can find at earth.au.
Meanwhile, for anyone who really wants to go deep into water policy, New South Wales Audit Office has released a new report on the management and regulation of regional water in New South Wales. The report shows just how hard it is to regulate the water industry, and it highlights how valuable water entitlements can be. The audit report points out that water entitlements held by New South Wales farmers, mining companies, and others were worth up to $41 billion in 2023, adding that there are about 40,000 water access licenses held in the state. The report also points out that New South Wales water resources are made up of a complex system of 58,000 kilometres of rivers and major streams. The report also notes that there have been significant water reforms since 2017, which is the year that the ABC Four Corners news program did a major expose of alleged illegal water use in the state.
You know, I find it amazing that figure that those licenses are worth 41 billion. I mean, if somebody had come up to you and said, "Oh, how much do you
Mm.
think those water
People pay for,
entitlements
yeah, yeah.
were worth in total?" There's no way I would have said a figure anywhere near that amount. It's just quite surprising.
It's massive.
Staying with water, and the terrible bushfires of the summer of 2019-2020 are becoming a somewhat distant memory for many of us. But environment group WWF Australia has warned that the effects on our environment have been long-lasting, including the effects on Australia's many different species of freshwater spiny crayfish. Australia's freshwater spiny crayfish, or spinies for short, go from dwarf species right up to giants, like the 2.5 kilogram Murray cray, which is the second largest freshwater crayfish species in the world. Spiny
Hmm.
crayfish are slow growing and long lived, and typically take about 7 to 9 years to reach maturity, with adults often up to 40 years old. WWF has pointed out that before the 2019-2020 megafires, there were only 3 species of spiny crayfish on Australia's National Threatened Species list. But after the fires, in the space of just 2 years, 33 more species of spiny crayfish were added to the list, which is a 12-fold increase. And you might think, well, how do bushfires affect a crayfish that lives in water? Well, increased erosion after bushfires contaminates the water, and the increased amount of decomposing vegetation in the water reduces the amount of dissolved oxygen in the water. As well, because there's less tree canopy, water temperatures tend to be higher, which can cause problems for species like the spinies that like cold water environments. So WWF is urging full protection for nearly all species of spiny crayfish and stronger efforts to protect their habitat.
And I recommend everyone go and Google spiny crayfish so that you can have that visualization, that visual to help empathize.
There's a spiny crayfish in a colour to suit every person, isn't there, Francisca?
Absolutely. And I'm also noting that today is truly the episode of Murray's. Murray Cray, Murray-Darling Basin, Murray Watt, and Birthday Murray.
That's right. It's a sort of birthday treat for me, this episode. Although I feel we might have done our dash.
I don't think there's any more Murrays. Yeah.
No.
Okay. Well, moving on to technology, a new grant of $95 million aims to keep Australia at the cutting edge of another clean technology, solar PV. The grant from the Australian Renewable Energy Agency will go to the Australian Centre for Advanced Photovoltaics, or ACAP, to extend its solar research program. ACAP is a coalition of solar researchers from various universities led by the University of New South Wales and leading solar companies. And the money aims to help Australia achieve ultra-low-cost solar that produces electricity at a cost far below current solar PV levels, which are already far cheaper than producing electricity from gas or coal. Technologies that ACAP is investigating and supporting include solar PV systems that are less reliant on expensive silver in the panels and producing more efficient solar cells. And ACAP certainly has form in breaking new ground in solar PV. ACAP was founded by UNSW's Professor Martin Green, who is widely regarded as the godfather of the global solar PV industry because he led work on the development of modern solar cells in the 1980s. And here's some audio from a recent Austrade video featuring Martin Green.
I'm Martin Green from the University of New South Wales in Sydney. Back in 1983, I invented a cell called the PERC cell. If you buy a solar panel now, almost invariably it'll have one of these PERC cells powering it. When we started, Australia was quite isolated, but we just stuck to our own ideas and pushed ahead with those rather than being distracted by, the latest current fad that was moving through the industry overseas. It took us, 30 years to get from where we were when we started to get the product that we were really very happy with. More recently, the Australian government established ARENA, the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, which is tasked with the mission of improving the prospects for renewable energy in Australia. And we obtained funding for an Australian Centre of Advanced Photovoltaics. Having that continuity in funding was really important to our success, and probably to the world now having cheap solar cells. The best thing about the invention is that it provides a viable alternative to fossil fuels for generating large amounts of energy, so that now the cheapest way of generating electricity is using these solar cells. That was our dream when we started, but that dream has turned into reality.
The New South Wales government has launched a $557 million home energy saver program that will provide low and medium income households with zero-interest 10-year loans of up to $15,000 to install energy-saving and cost-cutting energy upgrades. As well as the zero-interest loans, the program will provide discounts of up to $4,000 to families earning under $80,000 that are looking to upgrade with energy-saving measures. Discounts will also be available to renters to help them make upgrades with their landlord's permission. We'll put a link to the scheme in the show notes. And here's a bit of audio of New South Wales Energy Minister Penny Sharp talking about the program.
The home energy saving program is really about three things. It's about helping people take control of their energy bills through upfront loans of $15,000 for households that earn a combined amount of $210,000. Basically, those $15,000 grants can be used for solar, for batteries, for aircon, for glazing, for double glazing, for inductive heating. So it's electrification of the home plus solar and batteries is probably the best way to think about it. And people will be able to go onto the energy website in New South Wales, get information, work out their eligibility, and then we've obviously got the list of approved suppliers that will still start knocking on your door. We also have a discount plan that's not coming in until later this year. It's another $4,000, which is a direct subsidy for households that earn no more than $80,000. So very much targeted at pensioners and people on fixed incomes. We need to make sure that they can do that. They can work that with the loan if they're able to. And also, of course, with the federal scheme and the cheaper home batteries, all of this is stackable, so it can all go together.
So when are we moving to New South Wales?
Well, this is a great scheme.
I'd love to hear a provision for renters as well. It's
Yeah.
always good.
Yeah.
If you're enjoying the Earth Pod, make sure to follow it so you don't miss out on future episodes. And you can find out more about the things we talked about today in the Earth newsletter, which you can read for free at earth.au. You can help us to continue and grow by following the pod and signing up for the newsletter. You can sign up to the newsletter for free, or if you want to help us cover production costs and grow, you can sign up on a low-cost paid plan. Okay, back to the news. And there's a fair bit of news from Victoria this week. First up, if you live in Victoria, you might be aware of a scheme called the Victorian Energy Upgrade Scheme that subsidises things like replacing old electric or gas hot water systems with heat pumps, or putting in efficient lighting or ceiling insulation. The scheme has been running since 2009, and Victoria's Energy Minister Lily D'Ambrosio has just introduced a proposed law to the state parliament to amend how the scheme operates. Key changes in the proposed law include expanding the scope of the scheme beyond direct carbon pollution reduction so that it can help subsidise electrification activities and technologies that allow equipment to be remotely powered up or down. The proposed law would introduce a mechanism so that it can provide larger incentives for activities or technologies that have broader benefits than reducing emissions. For example, benefits for low-income households. Now, you might think, why bother changing the scheme, given it's already got a good track record? Well, it's true that it certainly has been a success. So far, it's delivered 93 million tonnes of greenhouse gas abatement, and it's provided over $600 million in discounts to households and businesses. And just in the last 5 years, the households and businesses that have taken advantage of the subsidised equipment and activities have seen their energy bills reduced by a total of $3.8 billion. But, as Minister D'Ambrosio told Parliament, Victoria's energy system has changed a lot since the scheme was first legislated back in 2007. Back then, only 3% of Victoria's electricity came from renewables, and Victoria is now generating about 44% from renewables, with 29% of homes generating their own solar energy. So the scheme has to be adapted to better suit current needs, the minister said.
Staying in Victoria, and the state government has also just released some important new climate change documents. First up, it's released 8 draft adaptation action plans for the years 2027 to 2031. The 8 plans deal with systems including the built environment, energy, health, the natural environment, primary production, transport, and water. The state government is required by law to finalise the plans by the end of October. And if you want to have a look at the drafts, you can find them on the state government's Engage website, which is at engage.vic.gov.au. And the state government has also released revised community engagement and social value guidelines that set minimum expectations for renewable energy developers that want to build a new project in a particular region or community. The guidelines set 43 expectations for developers wanting to access Victoria's transmission network, and they cover things like consultation and what renewable energy project developers should do to create social and economic economic benefits for host communities. Announcing the guidelines, Energy Minister Lily D'Ambrosio said renewable energy projects are expected to deliver major benefits for regional communities, including up to $2.3 billion in direct financial benefits from renewable and transmission projects over the next 25 years.
Two really cool, interesting stories there, Murray. Especially, I find the adaptation action plans fascinating templates for what are the risks and opportunities different sectors are facing. So that's a really interesting one.
I have to say, I wish they were a little more fleshed out. I did have a bit of a look at some of the drafts, but yeah,
True.
as a first
Mm,
cut, they're not too bad at all.
that's true. They are aesthetically pleasing to read. Like they're pretty reports. But if
Yes.
you want more meat, they would also be a lot longer. Yep. The Queensland government has released a new waste strategy that abandons national waste and recycling targets. The state government said the national targets weren't appropriate for Queensland because it's such a decentralised state. Instead, the strategy commits to a 65% recycling rate by 2035, with a strong focus on boosting recycling by households, along with a 65% reduction in the amount of waste going to landfill. However, the government has pledged a lot of waste and recycling funding. It will spend more than $975 million on waste and recycling over 5 years. The strategy also says that the Queensland government will develop a statewide plan for recycling infrastructure, which is important given that waste management and recycling is an essential community service. And it will also develop a plan for establishing regional facilities that produce energy by burning residual, non-recyclable waste. The Queensland government says it will also advocate for the establishment of a national stewardship scheme for plastics if it doesn't result in extra costs for Queenslanders. And it will push for national packaging reforms to ensure packaging is designed to be recyclable and that packaging producers take responsibility for their products after households and businesses have finished with them.
The New South Wales government's new clean energy investment agency, called the New South Wales Energy Security Corporation, has announced it will invest $100 million in the rollout of a large-scale battery platform across Sydney, Newcastle and the Hunter Valley. The funding, which will be the Energy Security Corporation's inaugural investment, will support the construction of 4 batteries. Combined, the 4 batteries will have the capacity to power up to 118,000 homes in peak periods. In other battery news, renewable energy company RWE has officially opened the Limondale grid-scale battery. And there's something special about this battery. While most grid batteries in Australia can only discharge electricity for up to 4 hours, this is the first in Australia that can discharge for up to 8 hours. The battery is located on the same site as RWE's Limondale Solar Farm near Balranald in New South Wales. And as well as the benefits for the grid, the solar farm and battery have local benefits as well. The solar farm and battery will each contribute $40,000 a year to community benefit programs.
Back to Victoria, and currently, if you want to build a big wind or solar farm in the state, you have to be at least 1 kilometre from the nearest house. But Victorians go to the polls in November in what is likely to be a tight election, and the opposition has said that if it wins the election, it will double the setback distance to 2 kilometres. Now, the Clean Energy Council, which represents clean energy companies, has released a new report that warns that this would be disastrous for the state's clean energy efforts and its efforts to meet future energy demand. The Clean Energy Council's analysis concluded the proposed setback would make it impossible to build wind and solar farms on the land that is closest to existing and planned transmission infrastructure, including large parts of Victoria's renewable energy zones. It estimated that the impact of doubling the setback on wind and solar industry would cost 26,000 full-time jobs by 2035, with around 3/4 located in regional Victoria. Wild numbers. The Clean Energy Council says it would also cost $3.2 billion in lost local procurement opportunities for Victorian businesses, deny payments totaling $175 million to host landowners, and prevent $33 million going to regional communities through community benefit payments, as well as denying regional councils payments worth $93 million.
Victoria has the oldest coal-fired power plants in the country, and we need new energy generation and we need it as quickly as possible. So on top of all, those lost payments to regional communities, all that job creation and so on, there's the fundamental thing of, well, What's our energy solution? There are some very disturbing findings in this report.
And, good on the Clean Energy Council for doing that analysis and getting that
Yeah.
out.
The Northern Territory government has released a climate resilience plan, which acknowledges that climate change is reshaping global and national economies. The plan contains 5 strategic priorities, including delivering secure and reliable energy. This is, quote, through low emissions gas, electricity reforms, and investing in renewable energy where it makes economic sense. And so when the Northern Territory government says low emissions gas, it means fossil gas from the Beetaloo Basin, which, look, basically it's not low emissions gas because, like all fossil gas, it will release large amounts of carbon pollution when it is burnt. The plan says the Northern Territory government will also encourage the development of carbon capture and storage industries that can store climate-polluting carbon dioxide captured from industry in Darwin and imported from industry in the region.
All right, let's get back to water news, and this time we'll head to the Bass Strait off the coast of Victoria. ExxonMobil has been extracting oil and gas from the Bass Strait since about the 1960s, but the area is no longer producing any oil. And of ExxonMobil's 19 gas platforms, 13 are no longer producing any gas, and the other 6 are expected to stop production by 2035. So now it's time for the company to decommission those 13 platforms and cap the old production wells. And a Victorian parliamentary inquiry has just released a new report on how that process should be regulated. The committee says the old infrastructure should be brought ashore for recycling. And it says infrastructure should only be left in the Bass Strait if it's very clear that it would be an environmentally preferable option. The committee has also called for new measures to make sure companies don't try to structure their operations so that taxpayers end up paying the cost of removing the old infrastructure. And it has recommended that companies be required to be more transparent about how much decommissioning is going to cost them so that the public can be confident that these businesses have allocated adequate money to pay for removal and recycling. And importantly, the committee has also called for the introduction of an independent process to check that oil and gas wells have been properly plugged, instead of just taking companies' word for it, to make sure that the wells aren't leaking into the ocean. And here's some audio from a YouTube clip about the committee's work.
In other water news, the federal government has awarded $1.5 million to Ozfish to help it continue shellfish reef restoration activities in Moreton Bay. What Ozfish does is dry out old oyster shells and put them in wire cages and drop them into the bay where juvenile shellfish attach themselves. And here's an audio clip about how it all works and why it's important.
I think a large section of Brisbane lives and breathes Moreton Bay. Moreton Bay and its beautiful islands are really important to the people of southeast Queensland.
Shellfish reefs are really important for estuaries around the world, and particularly areas such as Moreton Bay, because they provide habitat for a variety of different organisms, so commercially important fish and crustaceans. They filter when they're feeding, so they're basically like the kidneys of the waterways in these areas. They have disappeared, so in Moreton Bay, oyster reefs are functionally extinct.
The community realised that by losing all these shellfish reefs, we've lost the services that they provide. That's including water quality, fish production, biodiversity. Ozfishers are for fishers. We spend a lot of time looking at fish and wondering where they are and why they're not biting, where they breed and where they live. And we can see that there's habitat destruction that's happened for many years. Ozfish gives opportunities to restore fish habitat. We decided we need to invent an oyster basket. We collect our shells from restaurants as well as commercial oyster shuckers, and we recycle them, getting them ready to put back in the water. So we collect them, we dry them in the sun for a minimum of 4 months, when we wash them in water and they're ready to go. Then our community members can actually go out on our boat, on the Quampi Pearl, and deploy the reefs themselves.
We do have the oysters still there, but the baby oysters have nowhere to settle. They have nowhere to form new reefs. So by putting back this substrate and recycled shell, we're providing habitat for those baby oysters, and then those baby oysters in turn can form reefs, and that will then provide habitat for regrowing those reefs.
Shellfish reefs provide home, food, and breeding sites for fish. It's estimated for every hectare of shellfish reef that we restore, it will actually produce 2.5 tons of fish every year forever.
To me, this project's really important, not so much for me, but for my
kids and their kids, so my grandkids and so on down the line. I think it's really important that we do something about the water quality in Moreton Bay.
I love it. Cool.
Mm.
Just help nature do its thing. Just help.
Yeah.
And finally, the Western Australian EPA has proposed introducing a strengthened environmental protection policy to better protect the western swamp tortoise, which is Australia's most endangered reptile. There are thought to be less than 100 of the critically endangered tortoises surviving in their wetland habitat northeast of Perth because of threats including land development and feral cats and foxes. The species was first discovered back in 1839, but no others were seen for 100 years, and it was thought to be extinct. It was then rediscovered back in 1953. The western swamp tortoise is now quite famous and has a children's book written about it called Westy. And there's a website for tortoise supporters run by the Friends of Western Swamp Tortoise. The tortoise is carnivorous, and as the name suggests, it lives in swamps. And here's the answer to our quiz question. When the swamps dry up in summer, the tortoise goes underground to escape the summer heat in a process called estivation.
That's it for today. You're all up to date. 2 more people are crucial to making this podcast happen. Sophie Sedaris and the co-founder of the Earth News Service, Chris Dancy. To find out more about what we talked about today and other news of the week, check out the Earth newsletter at earth.au. And if you support the Earth newsletter, you're also supporting this podcast. And if you enjoyed this pod, there's something we'd like you to do to help spread the word about it. Please follow it and please share it with a friend, a colleague, or your network. And give us some stars on your pod listening platform. When Spotify and Apple see stars or YouTube sees a thumbs up, they're more likely to put our pod in front of other people. See you next week.
See you next week.